start. So, welcome everybody to this week's Friday Faction Focus. It's myself, Dom, and
myself, Tom, and we
yes,
are
and
from BlackToad Studios.
we are from BlackToad Studios. Hopefully, you know this.
I'm sure people
Um,
must know this by now.
yeah, and tonight we got a comment saying chaos. Unfortunately, chaos is a very, very broad topic. So we have taken our creative kind of direction, and we have gone with chaos renegade space marines, haven't we, Tom?
We
So,
have, yeah.
Tom, to start off, do you wish to describe what a chaos renegade space marine is, or a
Well,
renegade space marine?
that's what I was
Probably
going
the
to say.
better
I
way.
think Chaos Renegade Space is a little bit misleading in this particular thing, as I found out in my research. Because although obviously everyone knows about Renegade chapters, they can kind of go either two ways, in my opinion. So traditionally, obviously, if it's a Renegade Chaos chapter, it means they've fallen to the Chaos way of living, essentially. Or you can have a Renegade chapter that doesn't really like the way possibly the Imperium carry out their duties for the God Emperor, and they decide to sort of go their own way, but still fight for the Emperor. However, that does normally mean they get kind of excommunicated, Tratorius. So it's kind of the same result for them either way, whether they're trying to fight for the side of what they deem the good guys, or even for the ruinous powers. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of, in my opinion, the two ways you could think about a Renegade chapter / Space Marine force.
Yeah. Nice. So yeah, like Tom said there, when people normally talk about renegade space marines, they can either be go one way or another. But from a chaos point of view, they are the marines that have fallen since the Horus Heresy.
Okay.
Since the traitor legions went into the Eye of Terror, other chapters have fallen, both in a way of fighting for the Emperor, but away from the Imperium, or falling that way and then slowly creeping towards chaos. So, yeah, away from the light of the Imperium, they will potentially fall to the runic powers.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I think there's lots of different ways people fall, different chapters fall to chaos, and sometimes individual marines, sometimes squads, and quite often entire chapters. And then what I found doing my research as well is the chapters sometimes will change name as well, so they'll kind of be reborn in a new image.
Not normally always a good one.
No, normally bad. So, Tom, with this in mind, how do you think you could play and collect a chaos? Oh, sorry, keep saying chaos. Renegade Space Marine chapter army.
Well, I mean, playing and collecting it obviously is actually, I think it gives you more scope to play both sides of, the 40k universe. You could technically use chaos rules if it suited you, or you could even obviously use a standard chapter tactics from the Space Marine Codex, depending on whatever you're kind of feeling like. So I think it gives you more scope to kind of play the force depending on the situation you're in. Because you could have something that's let's just say an Imperial Fist traitor, a Renegade force, for instance, where they kind of adhere to the same rules as the Imperial Fists. So like the bolters and all this kind of stuff. Sons of Dawn. Yeah, I know it's a bit traitorous just for me to say this, being a Black Templar player. However, I'm using it as an example. Or you could pick an Iron Warrior, Chaos. Your rules as Chaos Iron Warriors to play that side of it as well. So I think you could quite happily sort of, if you're playing Renegades, you could sort of fit into either of those kind of areas quite happily. I mean, of course, you could go completely full blown over to Chaos as well, where you have more demon affiliation or stuff like that, where you sort of go, I used to be these, and now I'm completely the opposite, which is fair enough as well. And likewise, you could just be this force that just wants to fight in an imperial way, but in kind of their thinking of it essentially.
So you can kind of go from one extreme of looking very imperial, but have just fallen to become renegade, I was going to say the C word again, but I decided against it. Or you can have one of the other war bands that potentially has fallen into chaos and has become very chaotic. So you can have extreme chaos rules and chaos models, or you can go very light and just say my chapter are actually baddies. So I'll be saying the chaos or renegades and playing against your imperial stuff. And this is the law behind the game we're playing. Let's say you're playing against guard. Your guard are a bastion on a planet, and my renegade marines need some supplies. So here we come.
Yeah.
Because
the only way they can get it normally, because they don't have the standard supply lines of a planet in imperial space backing them, and then maybe they don't want to go to the Eye of Terror to live.
Maybe. Unfortunately, a lot of them go into the Eye of Terror, or they also go into the Maelstrom.
Yeah.
Normally we kind of go about what you're going to do if you play with them or play against them. I think it's very open with this because, like we were just saying, you could go against a renegade army, renegade marine army that could be very imperial driven, or you could go against a renegade army that is very chaos driven. So you would end up with like demon engines that you go against a marine one, and in the future, maybe when you're watching this, they could be traitor primaris or whatever. But currently, at the moment, lore-wise, they're not really. Or there's a little short story that came out. They were renegades. But yeah, so either way, it's very broad. I mean, you're going to be playing against 3+ saves.
Either way,
guys with bolt guns. Some people with tanks. There's some universal symbols that obviously we're gonna skip that this time because it is very broad and quite open to discussion. So anyway, Tom, we both picked Renegade Space Marine Force, and we picked 2 really, haven't we?
Yeah, well, got a few on the back burner, so it's all good. Yeah.
So before we go into who we picked, Tom, what research? Where did you get your information from?
Well, I have these lovely books here for starters, so this may give you a clue. I know that's obviously not the I'll tell you what, actually, 1 second. I'm just going to reach over here, and I'll get this one, which is probably a bit more appropriate for this particular.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah, so
King of the Pirates.
Because in my opinion, if you're doing this kind of stuff, this particular war is a pretty good example of renegades.
Definitely.
And it's also quite a good sort of thing to read through if you're interested in this kind of area, in my opinion. And your first one?
Well, my information I got from Chaos Space Marine Codex, so reach across as well. Online as well, did a little bit of research. Obviously, there's so many people can just put their war bands and their lore up, and some of it's amazing. Also, Tom.
The old. Now, is that a 7th edition book, or is it? It is a 7th edition book. I thought so. I couldn't remember.
Look at this. It's good, and So one of the chapters or legions or war bands or whatever I picked is the Crimson Slaughterers, and pretty good because obviously they come from Imperial stock. They end up with chaotic stock, but we'll go into that in a moment. So Tom, what was your first Renegade chapter?
Well, I kind of thought the Astral Claws would be quite a good one to sort of have a little look into. Obviously, they're not known as the Astral Claws now. No. There's also some Tiger Claws as well. There's a lot of claws in this particular thing, which I'll come into in a minute. However, obviously they eventually end up becoming the Red Corsairs, which is obviously quite a known chaos war band for anyone who plays 40k at the moment. And the best way to sum these chats up is obviously the Astral Claws used to be quite a prominent force in sort of for the Imperial forces. They get sent away to sort of secure an area in the Maelstrom zone, and they get paired up with some other chapters as well. So like the Lamenters and the Charnel Guard. Just as a couple of examples. But I think it's a classic example of them sort of very similar to how the Ultramarines operate. They captured an area, and they thought, do you know what? We've earned this. I think we should sort of, we should sort of control it ourselves rather than having, you know, imperial rule imposed over us, like there's something like the tithes and things like this, you know.
Sorry to stop
Yeah,
you right there. Just that's an interesting point, actually. It kind of that is a very key kind of element why a lot of these chapters turn
yeah,
renegade. It's because they lose faith in the Imperium, in the bureaucracy of it,
yeah.
or it's like some sort of like martial pride. So they have these big egos. They see themselves as above mortals,
Not a
and
hubris.
why should why should mortals tell them how to do things? And the voices of chaos
Yeah,
sometimes slip into their mind, or they go away and try and do the right
yeah.
thing in a different way. But anyway, sorry,
No,
carry on.
no, no. It's fine. It's good to kind of point it out because this is, sometimes these things start off with some good intentions, which I actually think, in a certain way, Luft Huron, who was obviously the leader of this particular little mess up, it was essentially, he wanted to kind of secede from the Imperium because he thought he could do a better job of running his local area, which is, thing is, however. There's a few things that kind of snuck in underneath this, which I'm not sure he was fully aware of. Because essentially there's also a chapter called the Tiger Claws, which were thought to be lost at this particular time, to the whole Imperium. They thought they were, essentially they had been stricken from records. Didn't know where they were. They'd been lost a long time ago. However, it turns out that our mate Mr. Huron had sort of been going, "Oh, we found you. Do you want to come and sort of join us for a little bit? Come and join our ranks. You didn't kept it a bit under the level. Sort of don't say anything. The Imperium thinks you're a bit naughty, so but we think you're all right." Now, specifically in this particular point, it was the apothecarian of the Tiger Claws that kind of really messed this up for the Astral Claws, because they started doing quite a few heretical experiments with the gene seed.
Scamps.
Yeah, little scams. Yeah, which obviously doesn't really brook a lot of respect from certain, like the tithe, because obviously normally imperial chapters are expected to conform to having a tithe of their gene seed done.
Yeah.
So someone comes in, they sort of go, "Oh, let's have a look at your gene seed. Is it all kosher? All good? Let's see." And obviously, I think in this particular case, Huron knew it wasn't going to pass the test. So
Like wriggling around
yeah,
on the table.
So but instead of sort of coming clean about the whole thing, he thought, "Do you know what? I am going to completely destroy the tithe fleet that has come to inspect me."
That never goes well for diplomacy, does it?
No, and this was in the Carthago sector for anyone. I've got a few notes here just because I need to jog my memory a little bit. And essentially, he kind of semi got away with this to begin with because he billed it as a misunderstanding by the tithe fleet for not heaving to, essentially, when they were asked to. Because I think there was a kind of a general understanding that if you come into someone's bit of space, you kind of have to follow what they ask you to do. And Huron uses that fact to sort of say, "Oh, they weren't really sort of following our pathways in how we wanted them to get to the planet." This kind of thing. They were the aggressors, and he sort of had a bit of a literally just destroy them, wiped them off the face of the planet. They're gone, off the face of the sector rather. And obviously, eventually this kind of snowballs eventually into the fact that the High Lords of Terror sort of get wind of this, and after many other little skirmishes and things like this that have been going on, involving other, I think it was the Flame Hawks, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yep. I think they took
an absolute bit of a beating from these chaps, and I think that kind of then spurred the High Lords of Terror to go, no, this can't carry on, and then they essentially send out loyalist forces to stop this from happening. And obviously, one of the particular key forces in this was the Red Scorpions, which is one of my my collections.
I knew they'd feature somewhere in this.
I had to slip them in somehow. It's fine. And so obviously, they go, and essentially, in a nutshell, without going into too much detail, because I don't want to take over the whole thing. A massive war ensues in the which is called the Badab War, and it based around loyalist forces and successionist forces. Because in fact, actually, the Astral Claws weren't the only Marine chapters fighting on that side. Just I have them here actually. Just so you had the Astral Claws.
Oh well, one that's gonna. So I'm gonna pinch one from your list.
Yeah, that's fine. But do you need to mention now? Yeah. That's okay. So because obviously,
mention it.
Because it kind of bleeds into what you're going to say.
We'll go into it because they're pretty awesome.
so you had the Astral Claws, obviously, who were heading up the whole thing. You had the Mantis Warriors, the
Yeah,
Executioners, the Lamenters, and the Tyrants Legion, which is obviously, I think, was actually more to do with the
it's guard, I
forces.
think, was
Yeah, it
like
was
the
the fighting
PDF.
forces. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Um, However, those chapters, they're not exactly. They didn't really kind of. They were kind of going along with what they believed to be the right thing, in my opinion. And
yeah,
I'll leave
yeah,
that there so
yeah,
you can obviously go on to your bit.
yeah.
Um,
I'll jump on from another point of view.
yeah, and essentially, it pretty much ends quite badly for Huron in the end. I remember correctly, he gets
Well,
stabbed. Does he
does
get?
it?
Well,
Does it
okay.
end badly
I
for
mean,
him?
from a point of view of holding a sector, it goes badly for him. I mean,
Yes.
from getting
His
away and doing,
ambitions are.
yeah. But essentially, he ends up. I mean, if I remember correctly, he gets stabbed. Is it stabbed through the heart? Is that
I
right?
can't remember. I'm sure he got melted.
He got That's it. Melted through the heart. Sorry, pardon me. And obviously, there is a certain chaos character called Huron Blackheart. Is that correct?
Melted does do that. Yes,
Yes.
and melted does do that
Um,
to your heart.
and
And
thing is,
black.
I'm not sure if it's confirmed if it's the same person.
It is. It is
It
the
is
same
definitely the
person.
same person because I know
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
some, because some people like play these little things where they sort of go, oh, it's not actually Huron himself, even though he's got the same name.
Yeah.
Um, but and essentially, obviously, they end up becoming the Red Corsairs, which is essentially a pirate-esque force of Chaos Space
Yeah.
Marines. Um,
Yeah.
which is in all it's actually a really interesting story. And if in all seriousness, if any of you want a really good read of lore-wise, definitely, if you can get hold of these. I mean, they're to be honest, I don't. When I bought these, they were not cheap because they're all second-hand off eBay, and they're kind of very hard to get hold
Know
of.
the value.
Yeah, just an example, because essentially you get this nice
Ooh,
little
fancy.
tome thing
Yeah.
here, which the two books come in. There's also a full campaign in there for back when it was. This must have been fifth or sixth edition, surely.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
what you can do is you can probably find it online, like read it from like a
yeah.
lectorium. I can't remember what it's called. My
Yeah,
brain's
yeah.
gone.
There's plenty of stuff you can read on it.
Yeah, you can find it online.
Yeah. However, obviously, if you do get a chance to pick up the book, it's well worth it for just
Oh yeah.
the picture quality in here is in my opinion is actually still heads and tails above some of the more recent stuff that's come out from Games Workshop, just from style and expansiveness. I think and the overall story here. We ain't got time to go into the whole thing, but it's a really good read.
Yeah. Recommended.
So
Tom's
yeah.
wish
So
list.
yeah. Anyway, Red Corsairs. That's where they end up, and then
Cool.
they obviously they feature in certain crusades that have happened recently as well. So
Exactly.
so yeah, that's
So
kind of my
yeah.
first little
Okay.
foray into this.
So obviously, so I'll kind of jump onto that wagon, and obviously with the Red Corsairs, they ended up being they ended up being the Red Corsairs. So they're a current Chaos Warband, and as Chaos Warbands go, very powerful Chaos Warband.
Yeah,
Like yeah, like next to a Baden, very powerful.
yeah.
So going back to the Badab War. Sorry guys if you don't know the Badab War, but as I said, I'm going to cover another one. So I'm going to cover the Executioners. So the Executioners were dragged into the Badab War because they had an honor oath to the Astral Claws. The Astral Claws essentially saved the Executioners from horrible demise when their home worlds, because they had two home worlds, got attacked by an unknown Xeno threat. Basically, the Executioners were just in front of the gene vaults. Everyone's dying. Astral Claws come in, save the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Executioners went, if you ever need help, we're there for you, bro. And
Brofist.
Brofist, brother. Then obviously Huron's up to his no good, calls in some favors, and the Executioners answer. Very honourable chapter. Now the Executioners, if you look at them, they are very renegade looking from the get-go.
Yeah.
Very much kind of a little bit like the Night Lords. They have lots of trophies on them and like skulls hanging off them. They're kind of barbaric
Not
in
to
some
mention
ways
their
from general appearance.
iconography on their shoulder as well is quite
Two axes.
chaosy. Yeah,
They are,
it's
so
yeah,
they are from Imperial Fist stock though.
yeah,
Probably a lot more like Black Templars and
yeah.
Crimson Fists
I
or
think so.
whatever. Anyway, so they go headlong into this war. Brutal army. A lot of the Marine chapters don't want to face them, and there's some really good conflict there. one particular conflict is people coming across a starport and basically find mounds of bodies of the Space Marines, Carcharodons. So, as you know, space sharks, Carcharodons, ferocious fighters, feared across the galaxy. They're also involved in the Badab War on the loyalist side.
Yeah.
And then the executioners and them had a fight. Everyone just killed each other. No survivors. And
last man.
Yeah, no one knows who won.
In fact, the last two guys standing went, "Should we
dead.
just kill each other because we don't want this getting out?"
So yeah, they were a serious threat during that war and kind of really helping the Astral Claws kind of stay afloat. It came to a point when the executioners came across a salamander battle barge and demanded, had a bit of a firefight, demanded the salamanders surrendered. Salamanders honorably surrendered, kind of like as you could expect, Marines being quite honourable. Executioners accepted the surrender. Now, Astral Claws then come out of nowhere and board the salamander ship, knowing they've surrendered, and start raiding the gene banks. And at this point, salamanders are protesting. The executioners then start going, hang on a minute, this isn't what we accepted, and then join in the fight and fight their former allies, the Astral Claws, defeat them, and then throughout the rest of the war, the executioners are just by themselves. So they are fighting against the Imperial forces and also the Renegade forces. So a third faction is basically born from there. And at the end of the war, the executioners surrender to the salamanders and basically put on trial. So the Astral Claws have fled to the Eye or fled to the Maelstrom into the warp. They're gone, leaving all their former allies around, the survivors. And so the executioners lose their homeworlds, which are forfeited, I think, to the salamanders. And because of their honourable duties, even though they were fighting the Imperium, they were sent on a penitent crusade. And so they went off. They couldn't recruit, probably expected to die, but they were accepted back into the Imperium. So that is a way that a renegade Space Marine can kind of be forgiven in very extreme circumstances. I think if they didn't hit the salamanders, they probably would have been gone.
Yeah.
Because, like I say, appearance-wise and their conduct during the war, they probably would have.
Oh yeah, definitely
been destroyed. But yeah, the salamanders put their neck on the line and went, they're all right.
All right. They only killed a few people.
Yeah,
it was only a bit of a Marine chapter.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got a lot of respect for the executioners. I think they're a really good.
You were going to do them at some point, if I remember
correctly. I will at some point.
Yeah.
When they release like an assault-based Primaris units, more than just the Reavers, I'll definitely consider it.
Nice. That sounds fun.
So Tom, have you got a second faction?
Yes, I do. I think I'm going to talk briefly about the Soul Drinkers, actually, because they're a little bit of a difference to definitely to the Astral Claws, anyway, in a kind of a contrasty kind of way. I've actually read the Soul Drinkers Omnibus quite a while ago, so I was trying to recall what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, I actually enjoyed the books; they were pretty good.
Quite an old series, isn't it?
Yes, I must have read it. It must be over maybe 10 years ago. Might even be that. That's quite scary. I was trying to think when I had the books, but it may have been when I was living with you. I mean, that's how long ago I think it was. Yeah, I know. But essentially, the Soul Drinkers are thought to be from Imperial Fist background, if I remember correctly.
Well, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm just saying right now.
I know there's a little theme going on here. But Black Templars are a little bit outside the lines as well when it comes to Crusade numbers, and also calling themselves a Crusade. However, they're fiercely loyal to the Emperor. And I might add the Soul Drinkers, just to sort of give you a guide that they're technically still loyal.
Okay, explain.
Yeah. So, essentially, this, I think, just to give you a little background on it, I think this kind of started with the Soul Drinkers chapter. They were kind of obsessed with retrieving a relic called the Soul Spear, which is one of their ancestral weapons, sort of, something that they wanted to get hold of. And they would go to great lengths to try and get this, even to the point of defying, possibly like the Inquisition, imperial forces, stuff like this, and essentially that is what their original downfall was. Was caused by. They crossed the wrong person. It essentially went to an instant. No, you're excommunicatus, traitorous, gone. That's it.
Get out of
Yeah.
here.
However, this is, and I think, sorry, let me just check this quickly because this is, I think it was a Lamius, the Lacona Starfort instance. That was it. And essentially, this is where this all kind of really kicked off for them. And it kind of meant that they got attacked after they kind of all the stuff happened. They were attacked by a combined force of the Inquisition and the Adeptus Ministorum, which didn't really go well for them, to be honest. However, you think that was bad, it got worse for them because essentially, especially if you read the books, it covers a lot about their internal struggle to kind of deal with what they are now after being excommunicated. So they had a Gorgolon, who I think was the original chapter master during this particular phase, had a bit of a Barney with a guy called Sephirodon. And it ended in this was basically an internal civil war that they had, so who was going to rule the chapter and the direction they were going to take.
Okay, because so this is within the
this is all within the chapter. Yeah, so that because they essentially, some of them thought, the Imperium as it is, now, they don't really like the way it's run. They don't think their people are serving the Emperor as it should, as they should. They want to kind of follow it in their own way. And these were kind of to start with, were sort of headed up by Sephirodon, who in the end had a big showdown with the current chapter Gorgolon, and it resulted in Sephirodon suddenly unveiling mutations. In this particular case, it was spider legs, lots of big arachnid legs on him. His whole bottom, if I remember correctly in the story, I think in his bottom half exploded out and turned into basically spider arachnid style legs. And then he killed the chapter master and obviously became the leader of the chapter. But obviously during this whole thing, they've kind of been forgetting that they're killing their own men. So the numbers are really dwindling. They're getting in a bit of trouble. And and a lot of the novices didn't really want to join the mutant, which was now Sephirodon, who's obviously now technically the leader. And they had to go around and kill them all out as well. So essentially, they ended up wiping out their own novices, which was
that's not a good idea.
Which kind of left them in a kind of a bad situation. So then obviously they wanted to recruit people. So and there was a chap called Sergeant, I think it's Anumes, if I remember correctly. And he was picked up from a planet that was hated by the Imperium to restock the chapter. So he became like part of the training of these new set of recruits, and they had a bit of a falling out. And his idea was that he wanted, the sergeant wanted to go and blat out the Astronomicon. He didn't like the Emperor's way of doing things. He wanted to get rid of it. Sephirodon didn't want to do that. He was kind of more, I want to support the Imperium, but I don't want to be with them, kind of thing. I want to work for the Imperium, but not in their line of order, so to speak. So again, this ended up in another fight, and another absolute.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in a nutshell, it kind of ended up with them grinding down, and it was all kind of pretty bad. And then some Howling Griffins turned up to try and sort of deal with the soul drinkers, because while they're having all this infighting, they're not really noticing what's going on around them, and and before they know it, they're in a bit of a fight with the Howling Griffins. I'm just going to double check that is correct, because
as you check that, there's a point here that I think is quite interesting, that if you do turn yourself away from the Imperium, whether your intentions are good, for instance, like in the case of the soul drinkers here, the issue is that when you're part of the Imperium, you have this massive kind of logistics effort that you are supplied, your ammunition supplied, you're getting constant recruits coming in from your homeworld or recruiting planets, you're getting your equipment, getting reinforcements. But the minute you turn from the Imperium, you've got none of that. You've got no Forge Worlds able to supply you with any new equipment. You've got no more ammunition coming in. Your ships can't be dry docked. You've got no recruits coming in.
No.
And your gene seed is pretty precious. So every hit you take is quite a nasty blow. And you're kind of then forced down the route of, if you want to resupply, you've got no choice but to probably go into the eye or start raiding your former kind of allies, and that is a slippery slope. You can't stay up on your pedestal too long, and then it's all it's all downhill, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But sorry, carry on.
No, it's fine. Essentially, yeah. So in the end of all this, particularly, obviously, they Sephirodon is obviously it's still, I believe, still the leader of the Soul Drinkers, and he essentially adopts the stance that they're going to reject the Chaos gifts they've been given, but still keep
By the legs.
yeah, but still keep them in a, which is a bit weird, but
Try and fit them into your
yeah,
power armor.
but essentially they don't want to fight for chaos, is what that is their essential. They've kind of taken the gifts, but they're not going to give back to their chaos gods. That they don't want to have that involvement with them, and they want to stay fighting for the Imperium, but in their version of fighting the way they think it should be done, not not dictated to by the Inquisition or the the High Lords of Terror or anything like that. They're just going to go. This is a problem for the Imperium over here. We're going to go and deal with it. It's our choice. We don't, but they are still traitors, obviously, from the Imperials' point of view.
Filthy traitors.
Yeah. So it's quite. I think it's quite interesting. I must admit, having run for that, I need to go back and reread it at some point because I do remember the story being quite fun.
Yeah.
It's a big old book as well, big old tome. So, and obviously, I've probably butchered some of that, so apologies. It's a little bit from memory, a little bit from reading. Yeah.
If Tom's made any mistakes, please point them out in the comments.
Yes, please make me cry, make me feel so bad about myself. No, I do apologise because it's one of these things that when we research these things, we don't have a great deal of time. At the moment. We're still getting into the swing of this.
Yeah, so a lot of this is done by memory, isn't it? So as you said, you've read books previously, so kind of going back on it. It's very easy to slip up. So keep that in mind, everybody, because it's time for these boys, the Crimson Slaughter. So let me tell you about the Crimson Slaughter, Tom. Do you know much about them?
I must admit, I obviously know they exist, but I don't really know an awful lot of backstory on them. So it'd be interesting to hear what you're about to say.
I can make a lot of this up. Get away with it.
Right, I'm going to skip the page at 1 second, mate. I'll just get the full history. Do some fact checking.
Right, so these guys used to be known as the Crimson Sabres. Now they were quite a young chapter. Are you actually looking this up?
No. I'm just preparing some other notes because I've got some other stuff to do off this. If we
Okay. Anyway, so Crimson Sabres, quite a youngish chapter, and like I've kind of said before, like Marines, Space Marines, are really kind of ego-driven. They want to be part of legend. They want to have this massive reputation, and the Crimson Slaughter are no different. So they went out to impress people. They had quite a few successes when they were a loyalist chapter, and they got praise from, I believe, the Blood Angels and the Ultramarine. So they had to have praise from one of the first founding chapters. Is amazing for these new stars. And so they were like, brilliant, this is great, look how good we are. But then they never got past that. No one ever praised them any higher than that. So they were constantly, trying and never got anything. And so gradually over time, they got a bit paranoid. Like if anything that was said against them, they thought there was a slight in there or an insult. And they got this reputation of being a very kind of aggressive chapter towards other Imperial forces. And so the slight kind of, you could slight hint there. It's a bit like an Anakin Skywalker. You can kind of see something's not right there. And then I believe it was, they went onto this planet and there were chaos cults on the planet. So they initially they sent a small task force to fight these chaos cults, went in, started obliterating people, and then more cults sprung up and more people started. So then they kept getting more and more Marines onto the planet, and eventually at the end of the war, every Crimson Saber was on the planet. And then last bolt shell hits the floor, they look around, everyone's dead on the planet except for the Crimson Sabers. Now it's rumored that it was Khorne basically cursed the chapter. So after that, the chapter left the planet, and they could always hear the voices of the dead, the voices of the people they killed on the planet constantly. And the only way to stop the voices, a bit of a world eater thing here, was to be in combat. And so the only way of silencing the voices and to get some peace was to be in combat. And so it became a very slippery slope. And eventually they went full headlong straight into chaos. And they renamed themselves the Crimson Sorcerers.
But obviously, just to interrupt there, it's a really good example of the Chaos Gods twisting a little bit with very subtle things to push kind of loyalists over the edge, and then they just keep going. Obviously Khorne's quite an unsubtle one, but there's plenty of other ones. Plenty of other ones.
Tzeentch.
Tzeentch is obviously a very you could be doing stuff with Tzeentch without even knowing it apparently. So Nurgle, a not so subtle one in certain
you normally tell.
Yeah.
You have to see everything.
And obviously Slanesh, Pride's quite a difficult one for the Marines sometimes, I'd imagine, especially if they've been sort of, trying to impress with their prowess in battle,
exactly. Excelling as well. Prowess in battle tends to either go, either Slanesh or Khorne. It's one of the two is going to take a look. And as much as you try and resist it, it's there and it can corrupt, and it normally does corrupt. But they became the Crimson Slaughterers and started to become basically a standard chaos warband, slaughtering everyone, conquering planets. And they slowly amassed this force of cultists as well. Like if you're that way inclined to chaos and you suddenly hear that there's actually a chapter nearby that's just falling to chaos, all these cultists just bled to them as well and Kim joined. And once again, if you're surrounded by an army of mortals, you see yourself better than them because generally you're a superhuman, you're a Astartes, so you are better than them, and you've got all these followers. They can, you suddenly think you can do anything. And so the Crimson Slaughterers were kind of doing their thing, conquering planets, and, slowly falling further to chaos. And they got into some sort of conflict with the Dark Angels, which I think the Crimson Slaughterers went all in on. Because once again, Dark Angel's first founding chapter, and they still held themselves to a degree. Actually, this is the first founding one. If we best them, we're the best thing going. And so they had this conflict, which in game term was more the Dark Vengeance box set. So that is when Crimson sort of first came out, was Dark Vengeance. And gradually, and in the current lore, or just before the current lore, they fell into the service of the Black Legion to try once again. Like it's all about trying to prove themselves and trying to make sure they're seen as worthy as they should be. And so Black Legion for the Chaos Forces is number one, top dog. And they kind of fell into service of the Black Legion. Black Legion being Black Legion, went, you can come fight for us. But the sad thing is, it's a bit of a sad story, but Crimson Slaughter are now just cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Black Legion just use them as cannon fodder to send them in on the first wave. And they're always trying to prove themselves to new masters to a degree to abandon. And it's a bit of a sad story in my opinion that the once proud chapter's gone full circle and now is a slave to its own pride.
Yeah.
Nice. And that is Crimson Slaughter.
Yeah, nice.
And once again, I've probably butchered that. So if I'm wrong, please put a comment below.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can butcher a couple more if you want, because I've got a couple other things I might just throw in, just to sort of give some other examples of renegade chapters and different ways to fall as well, because obviously we haven't really mentioned the kind of
the way they can fall to chaos.
Well, let's have. Yeah. Sorry, go on. Oh, he's
drinking. But Crimson. Yeah. So if you're going to make your own renegade renegade Space Marine force, you've got so many different ways of kind of going in and saying they fell because of the, and they have gone this direction because of the. So there's lots of stuff out there, isn't there? So I'm sorry, go for it.
No, and obviously I think one of the good examples is the Relictors or Relictors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Relictors.
Now these guys obviously were standard Space Marines to start with, and they fought a pretty good fight. However, they became pretty obsessed after basically there was a fight in the Eye of Terror when they were fighting with Cadians. It was on a space hulk called the Captor of Sin. Just check that there in the Stygia system, and essentially they were fighting a big chaos force. I think it was Tzeentch, if I remember correctly, and eventually the only way they thought they could win was by using the Chaos's own blade, so a demon weapon against the Chaos themselves. And obviously that is quite effective in certain ways, as you can probably understand. Because
Yes.
however, after that particular point, they kind of got a little bit obsessed with collecting these relics. And unfortunately, when you start collecting Chaos relics, you do pick up the notice of certain individuals. Perhaps say the Inquisition being one of them. And I think this all came to a bit. This all came
hackles up.
yeah. This all came to kind of like a head in I think it was. I'm just reading a 13th Black Crusade, and it ended up with the Grey Knights essentially pretty much wiping out the Relictors themselves. And this was down to them using powers to defeat. I mean, to be honest, they were just defeating Chaos. They weren't trying to turn to Chaos, but it was the method in which they were fighting, which didn't sort of sit well with the Imperium.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're not actually, as far as I'm aware, they're not actually sure they're truly renegade. That in the lore now, it's more the fact that they're more going after relics still and trying to beat Chaos, but using their own weapons against them. And obviously there are some Inquisition wings that may agree with that. That's.
Well, yeah, the Inquisitors can be equally as guilty, can't they?
Yes.
They
always say they eventually go Ordo Herectus, Hereticus. Sorry.
Erectus.
That reminds me of a game we used to play. And essentially, yeah. So in the end, though, Grey Knights pretty much ground to a pulp, and then they sort of went off to the Eye of Terror, but they apparently are still fighting the good fight. I keep saying this, by the way, because there is no good or bad in 40k, in my opinion. It's just bad and a little bit worse or a little bit less bad, really. I mean, I won't go into that because that's a different conversation.
That is a good point, though, isn't it? That renegades do tend to go off and fight because they don't believe in the way the war's being fought at the moment. So they've got different visions because the bureaucracy of the Imperium is ridiculous. So you can see how frustrated a lot of them are, and that's obviously the way the Astral Claws went.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, yeah. No, and I mean also in a more recent example, obviously was it the Brazen Claws?
Brazen Claws, yeah, that was
I think it was Brazen Claws, yeah. Obviously they had a Primaris reinforcement troops coming into a system on their planet. Turned out that the guys on the planet weren't particularly following the Imperial rule, and the Primaris troops hadn't even met them yet. Were after sort of saying, we kind of want to go and fight with our brothers, because we've been they've been indoctrinated essentially, haven't they? That's essentially it. They're supposed to fight. Essentially had an argy-bargy with some custodes and got shot. I don't know if it was all of them, but it was definitely I think one of the leaders of the thing. I do need to read the story properly before I comment on it really, but it's just little things like that can really trigger a chapter to suddenly just be like thrown out.
It can escalate, can't it?
Yeah. So the faults of people they haven't even met, it suddenly renders them as a renegade Space Marine chapter, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because
it's not good.
They're so suspicious over any of these kind of things happening.
Well, there has been historical issues of
well, yes.
Turning from the light.
Yes. I mean, we should probably do a chat on that at some point. The heresy at some point. It'd be quite interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, we will do. Hopefully, someone will comment below, and we can start going into a little bit more about our versions of what happened. Right. So we've gone through a couple of the warbands or chapters, as it were. So Tom, what Games Workshop model for the Chaos or Renegade range do you like, and why?
Now, see, Chaos is an interesting one for me because obviously, I mainly, as you know, I mainly collect Imperials. I do have my Night Lords army. However, if I was to sort of be collecting perhaps a kind of a fringe Renegade army, I think things like Contempt Dreadnoughts, in my opinion, look great, and they can fit either style of a Renegade or a standard Marine chapter, in my opinion. And especially the Forge World based. Especially if you want to go Games Workshop wise.
Contemptor or the Forge World one?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I would say both because I think the Games Workshop Contemptor is it's a very standard model, but you can kind of make it look Renegade or standard, in my opinion. That's the one thing I like about it because I'm trying to think of the way that because if you took a standard Space Marine, fair enough, they could be either or, but but the problem with like obviously demon engines and all this kind of stuff, you're kind of committing to one way or the other. You know. So if you whack a Mauler Fiend down, you're a Chaos Renegade. That's it. You don't. There's not that kind of blurred line. So if you,
straight away.
I mean, obviously, if you want to do that, that's fine. But
Yeah,
from my point of view, I like the fact that Contemptor could quite easily be chaosified or standardized or just kept somewhere in between. And I think, and I love Dreadnoughts, as you know. So that would be my pick. Because yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So you can go one way or the other, and that you're
Yeah.
right. If you put a Forge Fiend down or a Mauler Fiend, instantly you're chaos.
Yeah.
Straight away you're chaos. But if you put a Contemptor down, you can kind of go, look, we've just turned. Or we're not chaos, but we're renegades.
A little bit unsure of ourselves.
For myself, I'm gonna pick the Raptors.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
I quite like the Raptor kit because it's very multi-use. Because you can take the arms and the weapons and put them on anything else.
True.
And they are chaos, but they're not extreme chaos. I still think there's a bit of room there to kind of argue the point there.
Yeah.
They are renegades, they are chaos, but there's still hope. There's still hope that some of them might be okay. But the kit itself is beautiful. I love that kit. It was like that midway kit from old school Chaos Marines, what we have now. And so you can use a lot of the parts, and I've used parts all the time. I've bought so many wrap kits that have kind of merged into other kits. So for me, it'll be the Raptors.
That's cool. Yeah.
Right. So what about? We hinted at it. What about Forge World?
Well, Forge World, I would actually go with a plain old Sicaran.
No.
Any variation, because I think they've got a good scope for conversion on either side of the spectrum, and they're quite an ancient vehicle. I think they fit the part for sort of whatever legion you're trying to go for, because they've got a lot of weapon options and things like that on them. So and also I just really like the model, but I think you can push it down either spectrum quite nicely.
Without overly expensive.
No. I think I think they're not too bad. I mean, I can look it up if you want while you're talking.
Have a look, Tom.
Let's have a look.
Well, I go on about my one. So you picked a tank, the standard one that you don't have. So I'm gonna pick Spartan.
Oh, okay, Spartan. Yeah.
Yeah.
A Sicaran is £84.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah.
I know how much a Spartan is because I have one. I think it was 109.
Yeah, I think they're about 109. I've looked at them before.
Yeah.
And likewise. I think the thing is you can go either way with that. You can kind of chaosify it a little bit, or you don't even have to chaosify it that much.
No.
It's such a 30k look, isn't it? That you can kind of go, it's an old relic that's been trundled in, and it's very intimidating, and a good way to get your characters across the board if you really want to just moving forward. So that's probably my pick, because I love that model. It's very cool, and I like seeing your one on the battlefield. Normally not facing against it. Oh, there he is. This wasn't scripted.
It wasn't scripted. I just had these out, although it was for scripting videos, ironically.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, no, it's really, really like. It's a really fun. Nice. It's a lovely model, especially with the 8 las cannons.
Right, and so Tom, the last thing we're going to talk about is if someone wanted to start collecting a Renegade force, and let's say a Renegade Space Marine force, let's say they wanted one just turning, how would they start collecting it? What's a good way to start collecting a Renegade chapter?
I think this is actually quite a tough one, personally.
Yeah, that's why I've kind of trying to narrow it down to one that's just turning rather than anywhere.
I mean, if you're just turning, obviously you don't want to. You kind of. I'd say it depends on how you were planning on your chapter becoming. If you had the intention to say no, they're going to be fighting as proper chaos. Or if they're going to be fighting, no, we're just going to fight kind of Imperium, but slightly towards the whatever left or right of it. I think if you wanted to go towards chaos, I think you should start off by adding little bits of iconography onto armor. Just start off with some normal Space Marine kits and convert them slightly. Maybe kit bash a little bit from a Chaos Marine kit and a normal kit. I find, I mean, to be honest, if it's a recently turned one, the mark of armor is quite important as well, because I don't think if it was only recently turned, I doubt you're going to see stuff like Mark 3 or Mark 4 armor in it. You're going to be much more up to date. The Mark 7 and 8 armor variants. So that's another thing I'd say. And because people who have Mark IV armor or Marine chapters are very unlikely to have turned recently. If you see what I mean,
Yeah.
because you're not going to give all this really good quality armor out to you. Oh, these are my renegade guys. Just
These guys
it's
are
looking a bit dodgy.
questionable.
Yeah, questionable.
Yeah.
So, because I would say they probably that armor sort of resides with more of sort of nearer the first founding chapters. I'd imagine. From me thinking about the distribution of armor. So yeah, stick with like later Mark armors, and then just sort of creep in whatever influence you're looking for.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, if you don't want to go full chaos, it just has to be even things like you could alter the weaponry to the
Yeah.
point where you sort of think, oh, we like to fight with this particular type of armament much more than others than maybe the Codex Astartes allows. For whatever reason, you can just make it
Yeah.
look different. It doesn't.
Yeah. You could.
Yeah. Sorry,
You
Dom,
could
I
kit
just lost you
bash
there,
kits,
mate.
couldn't you? You could get chain axes. Am I back?
Yeah, you are back now. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I was saying you could probably kit bashing instead of using chainsaws, you could use chain axes.
Yeah, that's a good
But
example.
use
Yeah,
the rules for
yeah.
chainswords. It's just like
Because
modeling
it is
purposes.
more about the look, in my opinion, when you're doing these kind of things.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I suggest probably not trying to make them look too imperial or chaosy if you want to kind of have that fine line, just a little bit here and
Yeah.
there,
Middle ground.
a little bit here and there, because it gives you the option to pick either way as you kind of go on. And if you're thinking about it, trying to have a clear idea of where you want to take it. I think actually before you start doing it, I think it's good to sort of understand what you're trying to do with the army, because I find that if you're trying to have this army that's sort of not quite chaos, you kind of want to have some chaos stuff in there, but that wouldn't apply to an army that you didn't want to have any chaos in at all, but was just kind of fighting kind of
Yeah.
a renegade kind of fight.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite an important decision you should make early on, because you wouldn't have it drift either way once that decision's been made, really, in my opinion. So that's
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
start off with
Yeah.
the
You want to
basics.
know where your elite
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Start off with the
Yeah. So if
basics.
you,
Definitely just standard Marines and sort of maybe some leaders to sort of get a feel for how you're doing it. I think personally.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I mean, yeah, you've got to almost define where you want to be, like your army, your theme. Like, are you going to be chaos or are you just going to be renegades? If you're renegades, you can start doing certain things if you want, and not put big spiky things
yeah,
on everything. But you can maybe give them like bearded heads, for instance.
yeah.
It's simple things like that. Like normally you see a space marine, they can be normally clean shaven, bit of stubble maybe, but unless it's
Space
space wolves,
Wolves.
they're clean shaven. Yeah, unless it's space wolves or white scars, they tend to be clean shaven. So you can have like marauder heads or something like that, something different, like slightly chaosy looking blades maybe, or
Yeah,
chain axes, or they can change their gear up.
yeah, definitely. Or maybe they favour not wearing helmets.
Yeah,
Something like
maybe they
that.
do. Maybe it's
Yeah,
against the codex not to
yeah.
have.
Or maybe they don't like to wear one gauntlet on their hand.
Or they can file off the Aquila. You could put a cross through the
Yeah,
Aquila or something like that.
yeah.
Cut
Just as a protest towards what they don't quite
Yeah,
believe in anymore. But not
yeah,
not chaos
exactly.
symbol. It doesn't have to be a chaos symbol. Yeah, that's the
No,
thing.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. They could be almost mercenaries to a degree.
Hmm.
And likewise, if you do chaos, you can go. There's a massive chaos range,
Oh
and
yeah.
you can kind of go through and once again pick a theme. Like if you wanted, like in the Chaos Codex now, there's lots of renegade marine uh, traits you can take. So you can go down that route. So models are endless. You can do all sorts, can't you, Tom?
Yes. Oh yeah. No. 100%. And actually, that's one of the things that, because I've never really considered doing an army like this myself, but having talked about it, I can see the appeal of it quite nicely, because it lets you kind of don't pigeonhole yourself too much in one way, but it gives you lots of options
Yeah,
to sort of muck around with it, and I think that's actually quite a cool thing for 40k, because having that option is good.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you can kind of go your creative route and do what you want, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And then as long as your army, if you look at it, you can go, oh well, you're obviously going to use the Spaceman Codex. Use the Spaceman Codex. If you
yeah,
look at it and you go, well, there's a possessed ring. It's going to be chaos.
yeah,
So you
exactly.
don't. But for your opponent, you want to make it straightforward. Like you go, oh, okay, so you're going to be using
Yeah,
this instead of necessarily kind of almost proxying everything.
no, that's
So
fair enough.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. I think we've got it. So once
yeah,
again, like with the after the York talk, I thought, oh my god, this is amazing. I could do walks. Yeah, like you said, I'm like, oh, I could do a renegade one.
Scorpions, eh?
Yeah, they look renegade.
No, no. Pure as the driven snow.
Yeah. But anyway, guys, I think
Hmm.
we've covered everything really. If you've got an experience kind of making your own renegade force up, either still imperialish or chaotic,
Yeah.
or chaosy, put a comment below. Also, put a suggestion for our next video up, and we will definitely, probably, good chance of us picking it and doing a video about it.
Yes, at the
Wouldn't you
moment,
agree, Tom?
definitely. I would say so, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And obviously, if you've
Okay.
got any
Nice.
pictures and stuff, send them into our Facebook and we put them up because we'd love to
Yep.
see your renegade forces. Be quite cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you
Do.
want to, if you
Yeah.
want to share it around,
We love
feel
models.
free. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So anyway, this is Dom and
Tom,
from BlackToad
yeah, you
Studio.
just do that and then you get it
Yeah,
right.
it's easy. I don't know where you are. Thank you very much for watching,
Yeah,
and we will see you again for another faction focus
indeed.
trailer.
Yeah. So take care,
Take care.
everyone, and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.